Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. So I want to give you an update on some pretty disturbing draconian rules that have passed in Europe that is essentially aimed to completely de-anonymize cryptocurrency transactions. Hence, the entire purpose of why cryptocurrency was created is ultimately being undone in Europe. But I'm going to show you some easy fixes to get out of this, but let's get straight into it. So this is an email that was sent to crypto.com users, and there's a little spiel about why they're doing what they're doing. There is some different rules coming in, but number one, it says here, outgoing digital assets transfers. So you must provide the name of the beneficiary party, whether the transfer is going to a private wallet or a cryptocurrency exchange, and any additional information requested. So what this means is if you're on a centralized exchange like crypto.com, you want to send funds to somebody or even to yourself, you'll need to write their name or your name, if it's to yourself, every time you send a transfer. Now, what is this going to do? Well, that's going to link someone's personhood to a particular wallet, so that wallet will be attached to someone's identity. It's completely de-anonymized. So if that's to yourself, you'll essentially be shouting out on the rooftops that you own this particular crypto wallet, or you're going to de-anonymize someone else and that wallet is going to be linked to them. Now, this is a very, very disturbing development because, as I mentioned, this is going to undermine the purpose of what cryptocurrency and Bitcoin was meant for. So this isn't just on crypto.com, because this is on December 30, 2024, which is basically tomorrow. But this affects all the exchanges that are operating in Europe. Here's an email from Kraken. Someone got an email, and it says basically the same thing. Beginning December 30, some deposits and withdrawals in select European countries will require additional verification steps. These updates are a part of yada, yada, yada. So this is what they're doing. Wallet verification for deposits from private wallets. If your private wallet deposit or withdrawal exceeds 1,000 euros in value, or if you're using a new wallet address, you'll be prompted to verify your wallet ownership. How loving and amazing is that? They just care about you so much. So it's not just for withdrawals, as I mentioned in the previous post. Even if you're sending funds to yourself on an exchange, or someone else is sending funds to you, you're going to have to provide information about that wallet that either links it to you or links it to somebody else. Now, there's a number of reasons why they're doing this, and I'm going to go into that in a moment. Some very shocking information that I have for you. But one of them is that they just want to make sure that they can actually retain authority over currency transfers, which is what happens in the centralized financial system already. Every bank transfer that you make, or even if it's not through specifically through a bank, it might be one through these remittance services, neobanks, these other fintech operations, everything is tracked and traced already. You already live in an Orwellian nightmare, and Bitcoin has essentially broken that monopoly and we're provided a way out. And whilst I don't believe that the technocrats are going to be successful in their bid to dominate Bitcoin and essentially de-anonymize it so they have control over it, they're at least going to try. And this is going to be important because if, let's just say, a Bitcoin standard is adopted and everyone starts going into crypto, there's all kinds of problems that are going to happen for them. You know, people are essentially going to stop paying tax past a certain stage. They're going to lose complete control. So I understand where they're coming from, but fortunately, it's not going to work for reasons that I'm going to get into later. So all of these rules are based on something called the travel rule. And I'm just going to quickly go into that real quick. The European Banking Authority issued today new guidelines on the so-called travel rule, i.e., the information that should accompany transfers of funds in certain crypto assets. This rule will help tackle the abuse of such transfers for money laundering and terrorist financing purposes. So every time that you send an anonymous crypto transaction, which is any crypto transaction, whether it's in Bitcoin, Ethereum, whatever, you are essentially in the same line of people who are engaged in money laundering, trafficking of drugs, financing terrorism. Essentially, crypto users are now slowly being pushed into an arena where they're going to be considered funding terrorists or money launderers or doing these great crimes. And this is a really, as I mentioned, it's a very shocking development. And let me skip through and show you this video that is just going to blow you away. And you know, when I was reading about these things, I kind of thought that it was the people talking about these things were a bit hyperbolic. But let me show you this.
You're introducing the
Christine Lagarde, and this is what she's saying about the CBDCs that they're going.
You're introducing the electronic euro, as I know.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
How can switching to an electronic currency help?
Now we have in Europe this threshold above 1,000 euros. You cannot pay cash. If you do, you are on the grey market. You take your risk. You get caught, you are fined, or you go in jail. But
let me repeat that to emphasize this fact. If you use over 1,000 euros in cash to pay for things, you're in a grey market. You're liable to be fined or even to be taken to prison. So there's essentially a push to make it so all financial activity can be recorded, because as long as it's going through the normal banking system, they'll know everything about what you're spending your money on. They'll know exactly how much money you're making. They'll know every little thing about you, and I guess you could describe this as a beast system. Now, cash was one of the last holdouts from their control. Sure, they can inflate it, deflate it, and it's still subject to these financial Ponzi-nomics, which they have control. They have the levers of control through the central banks. But at least cash was an anonymized thing. You know, you could just give cash to somebody. It wasn't clear where it came from once it was in the shop till. You know, the person that you were dealing with who sold you those apples or iPhone or whatever, they don't know your name, they don't know anything about you, you gave them the cash, and that's how it's been throughout all of human history. But we're in a time where banking, sending and receiving funds is principally monopolized by banks, and since that time everything is de-anonymized. Every single time you send a transfer, it comes with your name. Every time you pay for something, it's attached to your name. Every time you go to the shopping market, every single purchase you make is recorded, and essentially everyone is going to know what you're purchasing. And I think that the central controllers, these mandarins, have gotten used to this power. The idea of people going back to a time where they could actually buy and sell things anonymously, it's like a wild fiction for them. They can't remember a time in which this wasn't normal. Or maybe they do remember it and they just think it's bad because they want more control. And I think these guys are, in fact, control freaks. But if I play the video, it gets a little more shocking.
Digital euro is going to have a limited amount of control. There will be control, you're right. You're completely right. We are considering whether for very small amounts, you know, anything that is around 300, 400 euros, we could have a mechanism where there is zero control. But that could be dangerous. The terrorist attacks on France back 10 years ago were entirely financed by those very small anonymous credit cards that you can recharge in total anonymity.
So she speaks out of one side of her mouth and says something completely different on the other side. She says, for small transactions, we're going to make it so there's no oversight whatsoever. On the other hand, she says, well, it's maybe too dangerous to do that, and we are going to need to control it. And she uses the example of terrorism. And I think terrorism has been a way in which they can get their foot into the door of being able to institute these very draconian policies. So in her eyes, the reason for these terrorist attacks in France isn't because of this mass wave of people jumping on a boat and going over into their countries. It's not because these Western countries help to destabilize these Middle Eastern countries. It's not because they have an open border policy. It's not because of this idiot suicidal ideology that's developed in Europe. It's because of microtransactions. That's the reason why all these people died. That's the reason why France is more unsafe. It's because these terrorists got access to anonymized money, and what they use, these anonymous credit cards or something like that. So that's going to be the reason why, or even small transactions are going to be tracked and traced. They've got to make sure that there's absolutely no possibility there could be any form of anonymous payments taking place. Otherwise, you're a terrorist. And you've got, let's go back to here. Like, let's make it really clear why they say they're doing this. The rule will help tackle the abuse of such transfers for money laundering and terrorist financing purposes. So every time that you send an anonymized crypto transaction, which is 100% of crypto transactions, every time you do that, you're in the same pool of people that engage in money laundering and engaging in terrorist financing. And I want to give you a bit of a shocking story real quick. I'm not going to mention names, but someone who is from a place that I'm from, won't say where, who is a peer-to-peer trader and was selling cryptocurrency without KYC, because, I mean, that's what cryptocurrency is supposed to be for. You're supposed to sell it without KYC, you know, doing cash trades, all this kind of stuff. This person is going in and out of court for the rest of his/her life on charges of money laundering, and including within that bracket, what she's being charged with, there's also terrorist financing, simply because he is selling cryptocurrency without KYC, sending funds from point A to point B without any oversight about who it's being sent to, as cryptocurrency is supposed to be. And this person is now considered a money launderer and someone that is in the league of people that are helping ISIS, people that are beheading people out in the Middle East. It's her fault that all these crazy things are happening. It's her fault for, all the terrorist attacks that are happening throughout Europe. It's this person's fault for all the wars that are happening. It's this person's fault for everything. And this will be used soon enough simply by using cryptocurrency. It's absolutely obscene. And it's not just crypto.com. It's not just Kraken. It's going to happen to everybody. And it's already being implemented. So this person here is saying they're now refusing to credit XRP deposits unless you provide the beneficiary's name and the origin of the funds. And this is going to be a really big one as well. You're going to have to tell them what your source of income is, how you got the money, what you plan on spending the money on. And yeah, it looks like they're already implementing it. So this person here says the following deposits have been confirmed. Under the travel rule regulation, you are required to provide information about the digital wallet addresses you receive deposits from in order to access the funds. And so this person here has got a number of different deposits that have been confirmed by the exchange, but they won't be credited to his balance until he provides this information. It's absolutely obscene. Let's see what else is going on. And this is something that's been building up for some time, and I remember hearing rumblings of this back in March this year. I didn't expect it would get this bad, but I want to make mention of what some of these developments were, because this is going to show how things are going. Any cash payment above 10,000 will become illegal. I mean, it essentially has, according to that video, while also anonymous cash payments above 3,000 illegal. Payments made in cryptocurrencies will be prohibited through unidentified wallets. This includes any self-custody wallet provided by mobile desktop or browser applications. I assume that's also going to be hardware wallets as well. I thought that anonymous payments are a fundamental human right needed to achieve individual financial freedom. Prohibiting sovereign payments will have negative economic and social effects. Now, this was being talked about earlier this year. I'm shocked to see that it's actually happened. Recent regulatory development: cryptocurrency payments of any size using unidentified self-custody crypto wallets are now illegal in the European Union. This decision is part of a set of new anti-money laundering laws in the continent. So, for all intensive purposes, cryptocurrency is banned, essentially, in the EU. There's no countries, as far as I know, that has a law that says Bitcoin is banned. But what countries will do if they're against cryptocurrency will be that they ban certain things that make it too difficult to use the crypto. And I'm familiar with this because this is what they did in China. They didn't outright say that Bitcoin was banned, but they made it essentially impossible for people to send funds from their bank account to the bank account run by the crypto exchange so they could turn their fiat into crypto. Now, I'm going to talk about some solutions and where I see things are heading. So firstly, there's a very easy way around this, and I'm going to teach you how to do this, but I want to give a little bit of background about how I know about this stuff and where I've come from. So I was living in China for a number of years. Back in 2018, I was making money there, and I want to put all my money in Bitcoin. But there were a number of rules that made that not doable. The big crypto exchanges like Binance, HTX, what is it? What do they call it? Same thing. They had already gone offshore because they could no longer deal in China. So even if I used a VPN and I logged onto Binance, I wouldn't be able to transact because there was no CNY, Chinese yuan. There was no CNY to Bitcoin pairing. So if I somehow was able to get Chinese yuan onto the spot market, I wouldn't be able to buy it for Bitcoin simply because I couldn't transfer money from my Chinese bank account to the exchange. So you'd think, job well done, right? Chinese Communist Party has been successfully able to ban cryptocurrency, but that's not the case because the second highest amount of transaction volume in the world is coming from China, even to this day. So if they've banned this important on-ramping mechanism, then how on earth is it that people are still able to buy and sell cryptocurrency? Well, the answer is through peer-to-peer cryptocurrency trading. So back in the day, there was a peer-to-peer exchange called Local Bitcoin. And on there were a number of individual merchants working for themselves, not for some large company, just individual sellers that wanted to make a bit of money on the side, who would sell Bitcoin for Chinese renminbi through bank transfer, through WeChat Pay and Alipay. Now, how a peer-to-peer transfer works is very simple. I send funds from point A to point B. Now, crypto exchanges, for the most part, act as a third party that is essentially doing the work of transacting for them, right? So you don't, when you're on Binance or Bybit or whatever, these AMMs, automated market maker exchanges, you're not selling funds to somebody else. You're selling it to the exchange, and the exchange is essentially buying and selling to other people, right? So on a peer-to-peer exchange, it works more like an e-commerce platform where anybody can make an offer to buy and sell cryptocurrency for whatever payment method they want, any currency they want, in any country they want, for whatever rate they want, and they put up an offer, and then when someone wants to buy, if they like the terms of that trade, they'll open up a trade, they'll make a trade with each other, and then boom, the deal is done. And it's done with minimal third-party interference. And this is ultimately how people are still able to get their funds out of the Chinese renminbi into Bitcoin. It was done through the peer-to-peer markets, and there's so much volume going through the peer-to-peer markets that the rates are actually quite low. So if anyone can ban anything at all, it's China, because there isn't a more successfully centralized state in the world than China right now. And I've been there when they try to implement something. It happens so quickly. I remember when they said we're going to get rid of all gas-powered vehicles in Shanghai and we're going to replace them with electric vehicles. They did that in 1 year simply by using a very swift hand. They're very draconian when it comes to implementing certain things. You either do it, or if you don't do it, you're going to get in trouble. You can't really do that to the same degree in other countries. China was able to do this. They've done this in many ways. There's so many things, so many examples that I can give out, but they couldn't ban crypto because you can't ban it. Essentially, there's always going to be a way around it. The best that they could do is really focus on these centralized exchanges, because most volume for trading Bitcoin goes through these centralized exchanges, but they're not the only way to turn fiat into crypto. There are so many different methods, and the other alternative to centralized exchanges are peer-to-peer cryptocurrency exchanges, and that's why I'm recommending Local CoinSwap. It's the number one peer-to-peer cryptocurrency exchange that I recommend that people use. They've got like hundreds of different payment methods, every currency in the world. And yeah, it's really good. I recommend that you use my referral link in the description down below. Use Local CoinSwap. You can buy and sell cryptocurrency without KYC. They're not regulated in the EU. You don't have to do all these things that were required of you if you're using things like Crypto.com or other things like Kraken or whatever. The other recommendation is HODL HODL. I really like HODL HODL because it's completely non-custodial, where your funds aren't on the exchange. You essentially are sending funds, you're receiving funds directly to your own personal wallet. It doesn't go to the exchange. You deal directly with another person. which is a really good way of trading, because if anything were to happen to the exchange, no one's funds are compromised. And I've got a few other recommendations as well. I've got BitValve, BitPapa. BitPapa is good if you're into Monero. So I really recommend checking those things out. And I want to end on one final note, and it's just going to be a bit of a history lesson for you. So for those who aren't familiar who I am, my main channel is called Davey G Does Chinese. I recommend that you subscribe to it. And it's about Chinese history. And something that's really interesting is that during my many months-long research on the Cultural Revolution, as you can see here, I made a 3-part series on it. What was really interesting about how that whole period ended was that, you see, the entire economy had completely revolved around this centralized planned bureaucracy. So every facet of creating any goods, any service went through a government bureau. There was no free market, right? Like if you were even selling sandals that you made for a side income, you could be arrested for that, right? If you wanted to, you're a pig farmer and your pigs gave birth to an extra pig and you want to sell it, a piglet, you could be arrested for that, right? Because it exists economic activity that existed outside of the planned economy. So what happened was, as the Cultural Revolution continued on into the mid-70s, what happened was that the planned economy was so dysfunctional and no one could really get what they wanted at all. If you got sick, you couldn't get antibiotics, you couldn't get medicine that you required because the planned economy was too inefficient to help you get the goods that you required. So people were eventually forced to go to the black market economy, and this would be some ruffian youth hanging like under a bridge. People would meet in the dark behind some house somewhere. People would meet up in secret, and this activity was severely persecuted. But because the economy had become so dysfunctional, even the most diehard zealots would be forced to come to the black market. And this is after like 15 years of hardcore state planned economy control. So you had even the most hardcore of the Red Guards being forced to go to the black market to buy antibiotics to cure their children's illness, right? And more people were just forced to rely on the central economy. Before, you had to get these tickets, right? These meal tickets where you would go and line up to get bread or rice or whatever. And after a while, because it was so inefficient, people just weren't getting bread, they weren't getting rice, people were going hungry. So it was just better to risk going to the unplanned economy, which was the black market, and find some way to trade whatever you have for whatever someone else has. And by the time of 1978, when Deng Xiaoping had taken control of the country and essentially undid those draconian rules and opened up the market with the reforms, by that stage, it wasn't because Deng Xiaoping was necessarily a good guy. He was just a pragmatist and recognized that the planned economy had failed, and the only thing that was left was this capitalist economy that had developed on a grassroots level. And if there was going to be some kind of government contract that involved constructing a building, where are they going to get the materials from? They're going to have to ask someone in the black market economy. You know, that's anyone that is outside of the planned economy is part of the black market economy. So in order for the planned economy to continue to function, they had to deal with the people that are outside in this black market economy. And that black market economy ballooned to the point where it dwarfed whatever the planned economy was. So the government, in order to be able to retain control, essentially piggybacked onto the free market economy and made it a policy. And that's when they tried to marry themselves to capitalistic ideals. And that's when China changed. So I'm making this tangent because I have a particular belief about how things are going. Countries like the EU and a number of other countries like Australia and whatnot, but I think EU and the UK are the best definitions of what's going on. When the country is so it's becoming increasingly planned and bureaucratic to the point, it's going to get to the point where it's going to create terrible inefficiencies. And people aren't going to stand for it because these inefficiencies are just, they're not tolerable, right? People are going to be forced to skirt around these issues, and these issues are going to, there's a number of solutions to going around them. Like I mentioned, you can go to local CoinSwap, you can go to HODL, and you can buy non-KYC cryptos. All of their plans, that they all the things they want to do to tightly regulate cryptocurrency are ultimately going to fail because there are alternatives. So every time they make a rule, every time they make a more draconian rule, and every time the financial system becomes more tightly regulated, that's just going to mean that more and more people are going to leave that system. Fewer and fewer people in the EU are going to start using Kraken, or they're going to use crypto.com. They're going to go to places like local CoinSwap or HODL or other peer-to-peer markets where they can buy non-KYC'd, non-regulated crypto. And as a result, I believe that a lot of these centralized exchanges, which I guess linking it to my analogy, you could say it's kind of part of the planned economy. Over time, it's just going to become too dysfunctional, because everyone that's in crypto wants it for a specific reason. They believe that financial freedom is a necessity. It's part of the human condition. You need to be free and unfettered. You can't be controlled in this way. That's why crypto is as popular as it is. And if centralized exchanges are essentially denaturing this aspect of crypto, then why would they continue to use those exchanges? They're going to go somewhere else. So my prediction is that people are going to go from the planned economy, these centralized exchanges where they're tightly regulated, and they're going to go to the unplanned economy, and they're going to be buying from individual sellers on these peer-to-peer platforms by non-KYC crypto. And to me, this is nature healing, because as much as I understand the value of why centralized exchanges exist, like at the end of the day, if all the volume can be centralized in one place, then you can get cheap fees. It can be very convenient to buy and sell crypto. But the point is that these fiat on-ramps are essentially monopolized, and they can be controlled by the state. This wasn't how it was supposed to be. Cryptocurrency transactions are supposed to be decentralized, so there's no one singular point of failure. And let's not forget that the first transaction that ever took place was a guy selling Bitcoin for pizza. And how did that take place? It didn't take place on an exchange. It took place on a forum just between two people, peer-to-peer, one person making a deal with another person to make a transaction. That's how it happened. And most crypto transactions should be like that. I think there is a place for centralized exchanges, but I think it's wrong that they have essentially become a monopoly, and it's time for cryptocurrency fiat on-ramping to become decentralized. And I think all of these rules and these tight regulations are actually a good thing, because it's just going to push people out of these centralized places and take them to their roots, which is decentralized peer-to-peer cryptocurrency transactions. So guys, if you like this video, make sure to subscribe. Use my referral links in the description down below for all these peer-to-peer cryptocurrency exchanges. There's no KYC. You're not going to have to de-anonymize your crypto transactions. I think they're a great place to be involved in buying and selling crypto, and I'll see you next time.